Okay. Well, my name is Sharon Geisler. I am the program manager for the Workforce Development Training Fund, which is a unique grant program that's available to Wyoming businesses that was established to really help businesses with their training needs, and hopefully be able to reimburse some of that cost so it's not such a burden to the businesses to continue to train their workforce. And so we have developed this question and answer session in a response to when we rolled out some new rules this last May. We had a lot of questions about those rules, and then just some follow-up questions. And just for sake of time, and also we have found that when there are more people on the call, sometimes they ask a question that others hadn't thought of or are afraid to ask. And so we just find it very helpful and informative to use this time to really address your questions, whether they're regarding a specific grant. We can certainly take some time to dive into that, or if it's just general questions about the program itself. What I typically do in these sessions is I will take you on a tour through our website where you can find a lot of things that can help you as you're working through these applications, and then really just open it up to your questions to see what it is that I can help you with, and then just respond to that as we go. Sometimes it takes the full hour, sometimes it doesn't. And so we'll just see how we go and what kind of questions you guys have for me. Okay. So real quick, what I will do is I will start with just an overview of the program itself by using our website. And so I'm going to share my screen here. And then are you able to see the website for Workforce Development Training Fund?
Yes.
Okay, great. So really the easiest way to get here is if you just remember dwswyo.gov, and I'm also going to go ahead and put it in our chat. This will really get you to anywhere within the Department of Workforce Services for any questions that you may have. And then once you're at this website, our program is right below that for the Workforce Development Training Fund. And we do have some general information on the landing page of the main section itself. And so this is where you were able to register for the Q&A sessions. We will be posting as the months are coming up, especially around the holidays, what it's going to look like in December and January. Typically, I've been trying to hit every other Tuesday, trying to keep it around the same time frame just to keep that consistency, but we'll have those dates up here as we get closer to that time frame. We also have a fun video here to just give you a quick little insight into our grants. This is also where we have the preferred industries listed, which can impact some of the different grants that you might be applying for. And then we do have our contact information here, and we do have one of our emails here, which I'm also going to post into the chat. But we also have a second email that is available, and that is specifically for the internship grant. So I'm going to put that in here as well. And you can use either one to get a hold of anybody on my team, but we have had such a large volume of applications and interest in the internship grant specifically that we did create its own email so that we can address those in a better way. So those are our two emails, and then our website for you to be able to get to this information. And I will go ahead and put this website in here as well, just as a quick reference. Okay, so within the Workforce Development Training Fund, we do have several different grant options that are available to businesses. And I'm just going to go down them in this particular order and just talk about the different grants and how they might be a benefit to you as the business. So we do have an apprenticeship grant. And this grant was developed to help businesses that already have a registered apprenticeship program established. They would know that that is the case if they have worked with the Office of Apprenticeship, Mike Broad, and registered their apprenticeship program with her. I know that there are a number of smaller businesses throughout Wyoming that have an apprentice program, but it may not be registered with the Department of Labor. And so in order to be eligible for this grant, you would have to be registered with the Office of Apprenticeship. And what this grant can help cover, in any apprenticeship program, there's different components that meet that requirement. And one of them is on-the-job learning that they're receiving, but another component is what we call related instruction, or the classroom or the theoretical learning that the apprentices will be doing. And typically there's a cost involved for that, whether it's tuition, registration cost, class materials, instructor wages, those types of things that are a cost to the business. Those are the expenses that we are able to help with. And so once the training has been identified through, when you register with the Office of Apprenticeship, she creates a Appendix A, which outlines the curriculum that the apprentices will be learning and doing in their apprenticeship program. And within that Appendix A, it calls out what that related instruction is going to look like and who the training provider is going to be for that component. And once that's all been identified and the expenses have been identified for that, your business or the training provider could apply for this grant and then lay out what those costs are going to look like. And then what we'll do is we'll review that application. We also have to take it to the Workforce Development Council Subcommittee, and they review the applications for the apprenticeship grants and also for the pre-hire grants. And then they make a recommendation to the director on whether they recommend it for approval or not. And then it'll go into contract, and then we can start doing those reimbursements. All of the grants in this program are a reimbursement model. And so the business would be responsible for that initial outlay of those expenses. And then they would be able to submit their receipts and documentation that we require for that reimbursement to occur. So for the apprenticeship grant, what we look for, one of the requirements is that the apprentices complete that related instruction component, and then the reimbursement can take place. And so sometimes, depending on how that instruction is laid out, if it's either by modules or by semesters or by certain timeframes, we can do the reimbursement in increments as those components are getting completed. It would be hard sometimes for businesses to wait for the entire time frame, which sometimes can be a year or more for all of it to be completed. And so we have been able to work in where they can get those reimbursements a little bit more often, but it does have to show that that piece of it was completed by the apprentices. We do have on each one of our grant sections the application for this grant, the rules for this grant, and then additional documents that would be helpful to be able to provide what you need for this grant. And so there's a reimbursement form, there's a final report summary that is required. There is a document that is required to keep track of the apprentices. And then, like I said, the rules. Sometimes there are additional businesses that are participating in this, especially if a training provider is the applicant and they're working with several different businesses that are putting their apprentices through that training. And so we have another form when there's additional businesses that are involved on the application. And so again, this is a grant that is available for registered apprenticeship programs here in Wyoming. Ivy Moore is one of my coworkers that also is a big part of the apprenticeship program here in Wyoming and expanding apprenticeships. And so she is also available to respond to any questions or any further inquiries that you have regarding this grant. And so she is available and I'm available to help with that. Our next grant that we have is the business training grant. It is the oldest grant in our program and probably one of the most well-known. And this grant was established in order to help businesses continue their employees training, continue getting their skill set up so where that they are able to help the business stay competitive, profitable. The training that is eligible under this grant does need to show that they are either correcting a skill deficiency or they're going to be able to upgrade their current skill level. We do need to see that there's a direct correlation between the training and what the trainee's occupation is within that business. We also need to show that we've had a lot of questions recently, and I will go ahead and tell you that we have been guided to look at the training that is being requested. And if it is a general, like say, for example, general leadership training, like a Dale Carnegie course or Wyoming leadership course, or something that is just very beneficial to the business, but very general in its focus and not specific to that trainee's occupation or to the industry, those are typically not getting approved. And so we're having to work with the businesses to get a better understanding around what that looks like and the training that they're requesting. So the general rule of thumb is that they can definitely show that it is industry related, definitely related to the trainee's occupation, and that we can see that there's that learning component that is specific to that business. So those are one of the things that we have been working with businesses lately. The limits for this grant were increased this past summer. Previously, all employees and owners of the businesses were eligible for up to $1,000 per state fiscal year, and we were able to increase that to up to $4,000. That's available for any employee of the business. For businesses that are in the preferred industries, they're actually eligible for up to $5,000 within a state fiscal year. It does start over at the next fiscal year, which is July 1st, and so it doesn't roll over. So if you haven't used that full amount, it's fine. There's no problem with that, but it's available up to that amount. The business itself previously was limited to $10,000 per month and $50,000 for the year. We've taken away the monthly cap and we have increased the fiscal year to $200,000. So the business is able to request up to this amount, which would incorporate each of their trainees' caps that they are using. And then again, here we also have documents that help you navigate this grant. We do have a document here that will help you get started on what you need to have prepared and ready before you do an application, and help walk you through how you need to set up your business account. It has instructions here again of how to set up your business account. These are the rules for this grant. We do have some documents that are required at the final report. The employment verification we do both at the application stage to make sure that the employee is actually employed or is planning on being employed by the time the training starts. And then they also need to verify the employment at the end, at the final report stage. The requirement is that they stay employed with the business for at least 45 days after the training has been completed to be eligible for that reimbursement. We do have our final report checklist to help you know what you need to have available to collect while the trainee goes to training. Attendance verification is one of the components that will need to be provided. And so this will walk you through what all you have to have in order to do that final report and get that reimbursement. Again, here's another way of providing instructions of how to do the application. And these are some sample verification forms for that attendance. We know that sometimes going to a conference, it's hard to show that attendance. And so sometimes we can get the person who is leading the learning component at the conference to sign that the trainee attended. There's an online training component that's available, and then just regular training form that's available. And then a summary by the trainee is also required for that final report. And so here's a template that is just a suggested document that could be used. The business training grant is my only one that is available online through a grant management system. And so you would have to set up your business first in the system. And once that's been set up and verified, then it's activated. And then the business is able to go in and create applications online. And so here are all your directions about how to make that process happen. And again, we are available to help you through all of these steps and provide technical assistance for any of these components. Moving on to the, we do have some frequently asked questions for the business training grant. Like I said, that's one of our older grants and has been around for a while. So we've been able to make this a little bit more robust. Our internship grant is one of our newer grants, and we're still working on getting documents available for you on the website here for frequently asked questions and things like that. But the internship grant was established to help businesses who want to be able to offer an internship opportunity at their business to give a work experience to an individual. A lot of times it's a student, whether it's a high school student or a college student, but this grant doesn't require that the intern has to be a student. And so it was very helpful as we were in the pandemic, as we were coming out of the pandemic. A lot of people lost their jobs and were looking for possible career change. And so this actually worked out really well for individuals that were wanting to get that work experience, maybe in a new industry, or even just start with somebody in that role of an intern and then hopefully progress as an employee after that internship opportunity completed. Some of the criteria for the internship grant is we do limit the hours to 1,040 hours for the intern. And if they're working full-time, a 40-hour week, that could be about 6 months. I think it's 26 weeks to be exact. If they're only working part-time, especially as a student or along those lines, you can do the internship period for up to a year to try and gain that 1,040 hours. You don't have to utilize all of those hours. Some people only wanted a summer internship and only requested, 500 or 600 hours, and that's okay. And so it really is very flexible on what your need is of bringing an intern on to give them that work experience, but also give you a part-time or full-time employee for a short period of time to help you grow your business and get that extra workforce. We were also able to increase this grant. In May, we increased the dollar amount that we're able to reimburse for the intern from $12 up to a total of $25 an hour. Now we don't, not all of the internships are $25 an hour. What we ask is that you provide some supporting documentation for average wages for that role here in Wyoming. And then based on the documentation that you're able to provide is what we will typically agree to reimburse. And so it could be $20 an hour, it could be $23 an hour. It really just depends on what the role that intern is doing, what your business is, and what that average wage would typically look like for the intern. And so again, here we do have the rules posted. This is also a manual application that you would download and complete. You would email it to that internship email that I have in the chat. And then this is just an example of the reimbursement form that you would use. And we can reimburse you on a monthly basis. We can do it on a quarterly basis. We have had people wait to the end to submit everything and get reimbursed. And we have found that that has been a little bit more of a challenge for the business and for us in regards to collecting all the information in a good time to capture or correct any questions. And so we are trying to work with businesses to get them to do at least one grant reimbursement before the end, just so that we can make sure it's getting done properly and that they have all the documentation they need to make that happen. In order to find the documents to help with the support of the wage that you're wanting to pay your intern, we do have Wyoming at Work available. Also, ONET is available to give some average wages for that in that job description. We've also used documentation from Indeed or some job placement websites that are posting what those wages might look like. And so we have some flexibility in that supporting documentation as well. And then I'll move on to our pre-hire and pre-obligation. And then, like I said, I'll open it up for questions for everybody. So we do have a grant that is available when businesses are looking to expand here in Wyoming and want to grow their workforce, or they are moving here to Wyoming and need a trained workforce. And with the rule changes, we were able to add in if they need to replace lost workers and need them trained in order to be able to hire them on. This grant is designed to help get individuals trained prior to that employment so that the business, when they hire them, they're already trained and already skilled to fit into that role. For example, if it was a CNA role and somebody needed to hire somebody who was already trained as a CNA, we have had a couple of grants been awarded for training providers that are specifically providing a class for that CNA role because they have worked with the businesses and they know that need is out there and they know how many they need to get trained so that these businesses can hire them as soon as they come out of that training and fill those vacancies that the business has. So this grant is a combination of the businesses identifying the need for that skill set, working with their economic development entity in the area that can support that there's a shortage of workers with that skill set. They're also partnering with their local workforce center for a variety of purposes. One, they can help recruit the potential trainees, and two, they can help get them hired after they finish the training. And then lastly, the training provider that's going to provide the training for that specific need. And then once those four entities have collaborated and completed the application and it's submitted, then again, we review it for its eligibility requirements, and then we take it to the Workforce Development Council subcommittee, and they review it and then make that recommendation on whether it's going to be approved or not. Again, we do have the rules here under this grant. This is the application. If there's more than one business looking to be part of this application, the first business is, there's a space in here for the first business information, and then any additional businesses, there's a form that they can fill out to put with the application. And then there's some reporting documentation that would be required. And then just some informational components for the pre-hire grant. Pre-obligation grant is available to economic development entities that are working to either grow businesses here in Wyoming or bring a business into Wyoming. And so we have some incentives in place here where if they can identify what those training needs are going to look like and have an estimate of the dollar amount that they're looking to request, they will fill out an application of the economic development entity partnering with the business, identifying how much they think they're going to need for those training purposes, and then put an application to obligate that funding so that we set it aside and we don't utilize it for anything else. And then once they've actually identified the training and they've started their growth or they've moved here to Wyoming, they would actually go through either the pre-hire grant or the business training grant to identify the training, get the specifics, and then would be able to access the funds through those other two grants that have been pre-obligated under this one. It's a little convoluted, and if anybody wants to know more about that, I'm happy to sit down and have a conversation with you about that specifically. But we have definitely have that opportunity to work as an incentive to grow businesses here or get them to come and move here to Wyoming. So though that's just a really quick high-level overview of our website and the different grants that we offer. I'd like to open it up for questions and see if anybody has anything specific that they would like to go over. And I just want to also make sure I made a few notes. I do want to let you know that for all of our grants, one of the requirements for them to be eligible, our businesses do have to be registered with the Secretary of State. They do need to be set up with unemployment insurance and workers' comp, even if they are considered exempt from the business perspective and from workers' comp perspective or UI. They still have to be registered with them to meet our rules so that we can get a certificate of good standing on those businesses. And so we can walk you through what that looks like as well. And then for the pre-hire grant, we also ask that the partnering businesses also be set up in Wyoming at Work so that they have that ability to post those vacancies and make that opening that much easier to access. Once those trainees go through the training, then they can apply for the positions that they have open with these businesses. Let's see, those are pretty much the notes. Oh, and then for the internship, I did forget to say that we also increased the number of internships that were available. Previously, we maxed out at 3, and we did increase that to 6. And so you can have 6 active internship grants within a fiscal year, as long as you have enough mentors and enough bandwidth to support that number of interns and that they're getting a valuable work experience. So that's what I had on my notes to cover. And then you tell me what questions you have. So it looks like we have some going here in the chat. And we also, if you would like to raise your hand and ask, you certainly can. So let me go back through here and take a look. We did have somebody mention, and thank you very much, in regards to the expectation of the time frame. As you can imagine, with the increase in the amounts that we've been able to award, we have received a large volume of applications. And so it is definitely taking time for my team to go through and review those applications. A lot of times there's revisions that need to take place for the application to be eligible. And so that can have a little bit of back and forth with the business. And then if it gets approved, either one, it'll have to go to the subcommittee. Well, actually, it goes to the subcommittee for pre-hire and apprenticeship before it gets approved, but that's another step. And then once it does get approved, we have to put it in a contract, go through the AG's office, you have that reviewed, we have signatures that we have to get. So for the business training grants, a minimum, if it's less than 30 days before the training starts, it's not even able to be submitted. I would highly recommend that you allow more, 45 to 60 days if possible. For our other grants, the internship grants, it easily can take 45 days for the whole turnaround process to happen. And then the pre-hire and apprenticeship grants, 45 to 60 days. Again, just because of the high volume that we've been receiving, it's definitely taking a little longer for the whole process to go through. So thank you for reminding me to go over that. Okay, so here's a question. Is it only available to businesses themselves, or is it also available to training providers that are providing training to the businesses? So the training providers are able to, they are the applicants of the pre-hire grant, but that is in conjunction with the partnering businesses that have shown that need and the number of openings that they have that they need to fill. Otherwise, typically it is going to be the business that is applying for the business training grant and for the internship grant. The apprenticeship grant could be either the sponsor, which sometimes is the employer, sometimes it's the training provider, and then sometimes there's a whole nother component that it's just the sponsor. So the apprenticeship gets a little bit trickier, but generally the businesses are involved in all components of these applications. Can internship grants apply to existing employees that are an internship type role? We have had this question, and we do look at the specifics of that example, and we'll talk to the business to find out what that actually looks like. Typically, we are wanting to have a new work experience opportunity be opened to have an intern come in and gain a work experience. There have been some scenarios where a business has an existing employee that they want to put into a new role, and they're gaining a whole new level of work experience of what that might look like. But again, we would like to make sure that we do talk to the business and get a better understanding of what that is, what their intent is, and the use of that employee. We definitely don't want to use this grant just as a funding source to help pay for an employee that you already have on staff. It really, the intent of it really is to provide a work experience to somebody new who is looking for that internship opportunity. But I think that we can certainly take a little bit of time to visit with you and learn more about your circumstances and what you have in mind before I give you a definitive yes or no. So we do have another question. For pre-obligation grants, how far in advance would the employer need to apply to have the funds available for hiring and training? The pre-obligation does have several more steps involved. And so I would certainly say you want to provide plenty of time for the whole process. From the time that we first start the conversations and know that is of interest, I would say give yourself at least 60, maybe to 90 days as a window. The first step of that is literally the application that you are just applying to pre-obligate those funds and set them aside. If that gets approved and goes through the whole contract process, then you would still have to determine, is that training going to require pre-hire training grant and get a training provider involved? Or am I going to hire these employees and then use the business training grant to get them to get their training that they need? And so again, those have their minimums. Like I said, the business training grant has that minimum of 30 days more if we can have it. The pre-hire takes a little longer. So if you're looking at that whole process, actually, you're probably even looking more, maybe 3 to 4 months to really think through and talk through the whole timeline. And so I'm happy to meet with you individually. And this is Joanna DeWald. I'm happy to meet with you individually to talk more about what it is that you're thinking and hoping and which economic development entity you're working with, and then really lay out that timeline of what all it will entail. Anybody else have questions? Those are the ones that are in the chat, but if anybody wants to raise their hand or speak out, please feel free to go ahead and do so.
Hi, Sharon. I had a question about the internship grant application process.
Yes.
And you covered the labor market information with regards to justifying the wages. What would that appendix, what would you like for that to look like? Just kind of links to ONET, screenshots of ONET?
Right. So I'm going to go ahead and click on ONET. And what we have found is you can go up in here and let's just say that you had an internship opportunity, say for an accountant. And so what you would want to do is this could give you the general, whether it's a bookkeeper, different layers of what that accountant could look like. But if you were to click on accountant, and then if you were to scroll down to the section for wages, typically what you'll want to enter is at least Wyoming. And then hit go. And it'll give you an annual wage and it'll give you an hourly. You would want to select the hourly. We do ask that all the interns are hired as short-term hourly employees. 1099 contractors are not eligible. They would need to be set up as an employee. And so this is giving me an average wage in Wyoming of $30. Now, to me, this would be a trained accountant that has already received the education to go into this position fully trained and working as an accountant. So I would anticipate an intern would probably be making something less than this. You know, depending on, say you were getting a 4th year college student who majored in accounting, maybe this would be the appropriate wage for that individual. But if it's a high school student or a 1st year college student or somebody who doesn't have that training to start and they're getting it on the job, they're probably going to be somewhere on this side of the curve. But then what you can do is just take a screenshot of this. Okay. And then in your narrative, you would let us know what that wage is that you're looking to hire them at. And as long as it fits within what this average amount is, we usually don't have a whole lot of pushback on that. The times that we do tend to push back a little bit more is if somebody is taking this high wage for an unskilled individual for that learning component, that maybe does that make the most sense? Or if they're going above that amount, we usually do push back when it looks like that is what is the case.
Okay, great. So as we go through this application process, we've been putting together an appendix with that. So you'd like to see screenshots directly from ONET. That would be kind of the best way to do that.
That would be absolutely sufficient. What we're going to look for is that the title of the role that you're hoping to put them in is visible, and that we're able to see that it is the hourly amount and that it does fall within the dollar amount that it's showing. And again, we do cap out at 25. And so that would be the most that you would be able to expect. But then, like I said, there's times when it's going to be less than that just based on the experience level.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm. And if you do have different roles that you're applying for, because you can apply for up to 6, we would want a supporting document for each one of those roles if it's different. If you're applying for 6 of the same role, then you just have to do it the one time.
Okay, great. Thank
Good
you.
question. Thank you.
If I could follow on to that, if you hadn't identified a specific candidate that you were hiring for that role yet, but that you were looking to be recruiting for that internship, let's just talk about your accountant example there. It looked like maybe 25 might be a reasonable wage if your objective was to hire someone that was more experienced, like maybe a senior in college, and that's what you were going to be recruiting for. Would you just be able to indicate that that was going to be your target applicant pool?
Yes, you can certainly do that. And that is something that in some ways we expect that you have not yet hired that intern because you're obviously hoping to get the grant to help supplement the wage cost of that. And so, yes, you're applying for the opportunity and identifying what that workload and work experience would look like. And then once you receive the applicant or the grant, then you would go and get the specific person that you're looking for. But we do have sections where you can identify if you are partnering with a educational institution to identify those interns, or that you've already met with somebody from an educational institute. You do get some additional points on the scoring rubric for partnering with an educational institute, but it doesn't have to be. But you can certainly say, we're going to go and recruit at UW's, business college for potential candidates. You can certainly put something out there for that. We have had people also ask, if I have just hired my intern, are they still eligible? So yes, with some caveats, we would consider, a newly hired intern, probably somebody who's just been hired in the last month or so, that they could certainly be eligible for that role. We can't reimburse for any wages that were incurred before the contract gets executed. But we're also saying, all right, so I have somebody who's been with me for the last 8 months and they're going to be doing the same thing, but I want to call them my intern. That really isn't the right intent of the grant. And it really is for a new person to come on board to gain those that work experience and to help you as a business get an additional person on your staff for what your needs are. So there's varying degrees of what that intern would look like, but you do not have to have them identified when you're ready to do the application.
Gotcha. Thank you.
What other good questions do we have? Any questions about any of the other grants? I know sometimes somebody has specific ones that they're in the process of applying for or just received. So this is really open to any of the grants. A lot of them do tend to center around the internship grant or the BTG grant. Has anybody been working on an application? Parker, you mentioned that you're in the process of putting one together.
Yeah, we've been today actually we've been kind of putting the finishing touches on our application narrative.
Good, great.
Yeah, and not a lot of questions there. I guess I've kind of answered already all of them. So
Good.
appreciate that.
Good. Yes. Oh, we do have another one here in the chat. Let's keep this one going. Would CNA to MA training better align with a pre-hire grant or a business training grant? This is a really good question because I'm learning more about this component. I think especially for the CNA 2, because what I'm learning is that a lot of times a healthcare facility already has their CNAs on staff and they want them to get that additional certification to take them to the next role. If they are already hired and working at a facility, the employer is certainly welcome to utilize the business training grant for this component, as long as they're not a government employee, a government facility. The county and memorial hospitals are exceptions to that rule. And so I'm making assumptions here that if a hospital had a CNA and wanted to get them trained up, they could absolutely be an applicant of a business training grant and have them go through that. This has become possible because we raised those dollar amounts for what the cap was. Previously, when they only had 1,500 per employee, that wouldn't pay for the whole amount for somebody to go and get their CNA certificate. But now that the amounts have increased, this could be a viable pathway for that individual because they're already an employee. They already are working. The piece to remember with the business training grants is that we don't approve applications that are looking for recertifications or license renewal, but we are able to help reimburse for that first time certification and that first training that they get for their license. So that might be a good one. But then if you have a number of businesses who are all saying, I need CNAs, can you offer that training to get them trained up so that I can hire them and they're already trained? It certainly could fit the need for the pre-hire grant, as long as you have those businesses that are indicating that they have that need and they need to hire these people. It does need to be people who are not already working for them. And so that's the difference between the pre-hire and the business training grant, is if they're already employed and they're already working for this employer, the business training grant is the way to go. If it's to get people trained up that aren't already working in this role, then the pre-hire might be a good fit. And it gets hard to delineate that for that CNA 2. Let's see, I'm bringing in a trainer and have multiple employees attending. I'm bringing in a trainer. So the trainer is coming to your site, have multiple employees attending. Do I have to break down the cost for all attending and provide all documentation, or is there another way to apply? So if you are a business and you have a trainer coming to your location, they typically give you a cost of what that's going to look like. Their fee and then maybe some travel involved. They have an overall cost. And so when you're doing the business training grant, there's a question in there that will guide your thinking. And the first question is, are they coming on site or is the trainee going to training? If the trainer is coming on site, you have a different spot where you're going to put in all of their expenses, and then the total for that trainer or those expenses will be evenly divided between however many employees are going to attend that training. And so in that case, the more employees who are able to attend, the less it is towards each of their own training budgets. You do still have to provide the pay stubs for employment verification. If there's a lot, 20 or 30 that are attending, you could do a letter that calls out all of the names. And we do ask for the last 4 digits of their social to show that, yes, they are employed rather than having to do 30 different pay stubs. But you do still have to do the employment verification with the Social Security numbers to answer that question. And you'll still have to provide an agenda and the other documents that you would need to do for business training grants. Hopefully that helped answer those. And then Eric, I'm not sure if I answered your question about the CNA 2. Hopefully, if not, we can certainly have a continued conversation with that too. And we have another message here. Yep. Okay. Yeah, the CNA 2, I'm learning just from learning more about that industry and how that tends to evolve, is a little bit more of a challenge of what's the better fit to get those people trained up. And that might be just specific to that area. And we can certainly visit on that a little bit more. What other questions can I help you with? All really good questions. Just checking to see if there's any others that fell in here. Okay. So it looks like we've addressed most everybody's questions at this time. If you find this helpful, like I said, we do have the other Q&A sessions available. Feel free, after you've had time to process all this and digest this, if you want to jump on another one and hear it again or ask more questions, please feel free. Let other businesses know that we have these times available. If you would really prefer a one-on-one and really want to dive into your specifics and would rather not do it here, I'm certainly available for that as well. And we can schedule a time that we're both available and do that one-on-one. So that is certainly an opportunity. But we do appreciate your time of wanting to learn a little bit more about this, and it helps us know the questions that people have and want to have addressed. If there's some things that you would like to see on our website that aren't there now, please feel free to let us know. We're growing really fast, and things are changing at a rapid pace. And so my updating of the website is probably not as current as it could be. And so if there's some other things that you would like to see and that would be helpful for you, I'm open to all of your suggestions.
Thank you, Sharon.
Absolutely. Thank you again for your time. We really appreciate it. And there's a question about where can you find this recording? And so I'm going to ask our comms team on our DWS site. I believe they have a spot where they put town hall meetings and recorded meetings. And so I'm going to ask that they have these available there for you to come back to and listen and look at again. And we have previous ones that were also recorded. And so, you know, if you have some time and want to see what some of those other questions were, we'll make those available as well. All right. Well, you all have a wonderful afternoon, and I'm available if you need anything.
Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Sharon. Have a great
you.
day.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.